Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our next Cornell Notes assignment for the week. Today we're going to be talking about the growth and development of fiction writing in English literature during the Victorian era. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. Feel free to ask questions if you have any concerns after viewing this shorter presentation. Be sure to submit your Cornell Notes with that summary as well. Let's get underway. It's hard to imagine a time when the novel, as we know it, was not a common literary form. But in the long history of literature, the rise of fiction as a popular genre is a relatively recent phenomenon. The novel is an extended fictional narrative written in prose, something that you already know. It's a book, a fiction piece. Typically, the narrative depicts the development of a character and revolves around a plot and a theme which act as its organizing principles. The novel, as we think of it, came into being after Daniel Defoe published Robinson Crusoe in 1719. During this time, the novel was viewed primarily as a form of entertainment in the mid-18th century. A few steps forward in the development of plot and characterization took place in the novels Pamela in 1740, Clarissa, 1747 to 1748, by Samuel Richardson, and Tom Jones, in 1749, by Henry Fielding. The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman, 1760 to 1767, which was a highly original work by Lawrence Sterne. These focused on characters' conversations and remembrances instead of action. So these writers inspired other writers to take the novel form in a new direction. The Victorian period from 1832 to 1901 is often called the age of the novel. The Victorian era ushered in the focus on realistic depictions of life that continues to this day. Victorian novels are known for their realism, the detailed presentation of everyday life. Through the novel, Victorian writers wanted to document the lives and values of the English, including the lower classes. As the Victorian era continued, social concern began playing a greater role in the general society, and the novel became a tool for exposing society's ills. No other writer used this tool as effectively as did Charles Dickens. His novels, Oliver Twist, 1837 to 1839, A Christmas Carol in 1843, David Copperfield in 1849 to 1850, and Bleak House, 1852 to 1853, described in riveting detail the troubling state of England's lower classes. You can see more of Dickens in your textbook. Here's an excerpt from Oliver Twist. For the next 8 or 10 months, Oliver was the victim of a systematic course of treachery and deception. He was brought up by hand. The hungry and destitute situation of the infant orphan was duly reported by the workhouse authorities to the parish authorities. The parish authorities magnanimously and humanely resolved that Oliver should be farmed, or in other words, that he should be dispatched to a branch work home some 3 miles off, where 20 or 30 other juvenile offenders against the poor laws rolled about the floor all day without the inconvenience of too much food or too much clothing. They pull in those social concerns. In the 19th century, a remarkable variety of English novels were written, giving rise to several popular new subgenres. Historical novels combined historical facts with fictional elements to recreate the spirit of a past age. Charles Dickens based A Tale of Two Cities in 1859 on historical accounts of the French Revolution. Gothic novels were horror tales that became extremely popular in England near the turn of the 19th century. Frankenstein, from 1818 by Mary Shelley, is the best known example of Gothic fiction. Mystery is a major ingredient of detective novels and detective fiction. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle mastered this form in the late 1800s and created Sherlock Holmes, still the world's most famous detective. And finally, stories focusing on criminals and their motives attracted a growing audience. These were called Newgate fiction, named after a famous London prison, and it explored the nature of crime and violence. An example is Charles Dickens' Barnaby Rudge, written in 1841, which looks at the effects of civil unrest and riot. After 1880, realism spawned several other schools of literary writing too, including psychological realism and naturalism. In France, naturalism promoted a grimmer, more scientific approach to fiction. Naturalistic writing was an attempt to depict the human condition as objectively as scientific writings depicted the processes of nature. An example is Test of the D'Urbervilles, written in 1891, in which Thomas Hardy portrayed a hostile world where only the fittest prospered. So as fiction develops and continues on, we see women novelists as well, including Jane Austen, Elizabeth Cleghorn Gaskell, George Eliot, who had to write under a fake name, her real name Mary Ann Evans, to get her work into public. Alice Bell, also better known as Emily Bronte, and her sister Currier Bell, Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, The Professor Shirley. So women begin to develop a voice stronger than they've seen before, too, in these realms because of the fictional form. But as you can see from some of those examples, George Eliot, Emily Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, they write under aliases. So we're getting closer to that being an accepted form in British literature, too. That's all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to submit your Cornell notes and be sure to ask any questions that may arise. Have a good week, and we'll see you next time.